Hey guys, and welcome to another video. This one is going to be on stats and how you can get more of them and the ones that are important and their interactions. So I'm going to start by going quickly through some of the less important aspects of the stats. Obviously down here at the bottom is your actual stats, okay, your stat points. Your strength, dex, and int are going to have direct effects on things. Obviously, if you're playing this game, you already know some of this stuff, but I'm going to go in quick. So strength, besides giving you access to strength gear and strength runes, gives you extra hit points and armor. Cool. Dexterity gives you hit rate and dodge rate, and unknown to a lot of people, it actually gives you critical damage dampening as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Int gives you mana and barrier. Self-explanatory. Had to go through those quickly anyway, mostly because I wanted to talk about the dexterity. Now, to see your stats, okay, if you don't already know, down here at the bottom of your character window is a little scroll, and when you push it, it's going to come up with a whole bunch of information. Some of this information is completely useless to you, and some of it will be good. If you go through and look, I'm going to get to that. There's tons of information on your attack, your defense, other stuff, and then you could switch to the skill and look at those specifically as well. Now, if you go to down here at the bottom and click Show Maximum, okay, instead of showing your numbers, it's going to show you what the caps are on those. And in most cases, when things have a cap in this game, you should generally be trying to reach that cap. So attack and cast speed can be 5.0. You want to reach that because that's the maximum speed you can fire stuff at. Another important one is your resistances. I'm actually over cap on these, but if you look at the current versus the maximum. But this is where you can see how much you can get on certain things. Your armor can go to 75. Now, these are soft caps in most cases, which means there are special things that will let you go above and beyond these caps to a hard cap, which there is no way to show in game. You just got to kind of know that they exist. Any number that is in red in your stats or on a skill means that that stat has hit its maximum. So if you look at the projectile speed on my charge release, 1200 is the maximum speed. If I put any more speed on there, it's not going to make it go faster. This is something important to keep in mind. There aren't too many caps that you can reach that you shouldn't try to reach. Armor, resistances, dodge rate, your main attacks and stuff, your critical rates. These are all things that you really want to make sure you're getting as high as possible within your current build. Sometimes, if you're going to go an all dodge build, you're not obviously going to be too worried about your armor cap. Actually, you probably should be, but the point is that you're not necessarily going to hit all the caps, but there are some that you should definitely be aiming for. So in cast speed, or attack speed is one that you should always be trying to get to that 5.0 limit. Your skills have the same thing, where if you hit show maximum, it will show the maximums on certain stuff, and just the stats on each of the skills. Up at the top, obviously, you get your strength, dex, and int, your hit points, your barrier, and your mana. Off to the side here is your PvP ranking. I don't know if that's ever important. I don't PvP. But that's the basics of the stats, okay? I'm going to split these next parts. I'm going to stop the video and start again because I don't want to screw up and have to redo the whole video when I inevitably screw up so badly that I, just fall apart like a taco, just crumble. Okay, so I'll see you in the next one. We're going to start with the attack. Okay, attack. Here we go. Someone specifically asked me to do this, so I am going to go through this fairly in depth and explain where these numbers are coming from and how the numbers interact so that you can get the most damage out of your character. because some people don't really understand. They're just kind of putting numbers onto their gear and they don't know how they interact. So when it comes to damage, having a large amount of flat damage, okay, so nothing with a percent after it, you want stuff with a plus, okay. In my case, almost all of my gear has lightning damage plus, and that is because you want as much flat damage as you can, and I've described it in other videos as, think of it like the base of a pyramid. The more flat damage you have, the longer, wider the base of the pyramid is going to be, taller the pyramid's going to be, more damage you can do. Should be fairly simple to explain, but some people don't get it. So if you look, I've got lightning damage, and I don't have lightning on that one. My God, now I'm gonna look like an idiot. I'm looking for flat lightning damage specifically. I know I have. There's more lightning damage. I'm pretty sure I got lightning damage on here. I got lightning damage on both of my rings. So as much lightning damage as you can possibly muster, okay? Or not lightning, but whatever your thing is, whether it's physical, fire, poison, okay? That's an important thing. There are exceptions to this. I don't want to sound like it's the only thing. If you're doing crazy dot builds or whatever, there might be a number that's more important, okay? But when it comes to just straightforward builds, that flat number is going to be drastically important, because every other modifier is going to amplify that base value, okay? So that's a very important thing. Spell damage is also important, or attack damage is also important if you're an attack, but it's not going to be nearly as important as the direct elemental values, because you can gain so much more of it. So that's the basic. First thing first, okay, you want to get that flat damage. Now, if you click on, okay, any of the things, you can see a more complicated breakdown off to the side, okay, how you're getting that value. So there's all of my lightning damage put together, all my flat lightning damage. There is what the base value is. And then I'm getting amplified, or percentage, sorry, and amplification, okay? Amplification is going to be much more important than a plus percent, okay? Because it's going to make a much larger difference, as it's going to amplify all of it. The percent is only going to affect the base of value, okay? So this affects the percentage and the flat values, where this only affects the flat values. So obviously you're going to try to get as much amplification as you can. Okay, that's going to be an important thing. So if you look at any of the good builds, or any of the players with a lot of stuff, all their link runes in most cases are going to have damage amplification, on here, damage amplification. You look over here, damage amplification. As much damage amplification as you can possibly muster, okay? And if it means sacrificing 50% damage for 5% amp, you should go for the amp. It's going to do more. Not in every case, and again, don't correct me if there's some weird build that it does things differently, but for the most part, that is going to be build. That's how you're going to get that damage. Obviously, increasing the levels of your runes, increasing the level of your links, all that stuff, candoring, multipliers, but that's the bulk of how to get damage, okay? Now, if we go in and you go down, your cast speed is so self-explanatory. This is how many casts per second or attacks per second you are going to do. Obviously, if you have a large base value and a really slow attack, you're not going to do as much damage. So you do want to balance it, and like I stated earlier in the video, getting your cast speed up to maximum it should be an important thing for pretty much every build. I could be totally wrong. That's my dinner bell right there. Your attack hit rate. This is something, your attack and spell hit rate. This is something that people overlook, okay, a lot. And as I continue in this video, I'm going to talk quickly about how this value, okay, people will look at just this number, the percentage. That number is going to change based on the difficulty of the monsters you're fighting. At the top here, you can see info is displayed based on level 100. So up until you fight level 100, this number will be completely accurate. If you're going into a level 120 zone, okay, this number will not be accurate. And there is a way to see what that value is going to be, and it is simply going to the target dummy, the training area. If you have never been there, I'm going to show you how to get there. So you go to your waypoint. Down here on the right is training area. And turn off my auto attack. You have this little gear up here, okay, and enemy level. If you change this level, it will show on your skills, okay? So if I take this and I go level 135, okay, and I hit the button, when I go into my stats will reflect that, okay? If you go to a point where the numbers change negatively, you know that you can't, or you shouldn't be going beyond that point. What was I going to talk about? Hold on. I'll remember. Give me a second. I was on... So, your spell hit or attack hit, okay, your critical rate, I think are the only... and your armor, okay, which is in defense, and I'll get to that later. And your resistances, too. I'll do the armor stuff when I get to the defense thing. But in attack, your hit rate and your crit rate are the things that are going to get affected by going into a higher thing. Obviously, if you run into a map that has a modifier that lowers your critical rate, that is going to be affected by it as well. So don't just look at this 100% and go, oh, I've got enough hit rate, I can stop now. Because the cap, well, there's no cap, but the required to do level 150 and keep it at 100% is something like 45,000 hit rate. So you can sort of never have too much. You can actually have too much, but don't just look at this value and go, I have enough. Same with your crit rate. I think it's 700 is the cap for hitting 150 and still having 100%, and your critical damage can go to 1,300 now, I believe. So that's something to keep in mind. Double maximize damage. This really confuses people. Okay, they'll see maximize damage on stuff. So this is a chance to do double damage. Okay, if at base, it'll do double damage. It says exactly on it, do double damage. If you increase the maximized values, it will do more. Okay, and if you do triple and then the same thing, it'll do more. Critical works the same way, and it is incredibly confusing that there are two. I don't know why there is two, but there is. And your crits can also double damage. People have asked me about that. So yes, if you have double damage chance, I have 9.3% here, which is actually not the correct value because there's certain values that will not show up in that tree. If you get something like electric shock, okay, it won't show the crit rate on this because it only applies when the enemy is electrified, okay, or when they're shocked. Sorry. So there's certain values that even though you have them are not going to show up in there. So you sort of need to be aware of those as you do stuff. So even though mine shows 9% double damage chance, I have closer to like 25%. So crits, much like double damage, they have a value, and it's going to take your base damage number and multiply it by that much. So crits and double damage, and they can interact. So that's something you should probably know about. Penetration is important. Every enemy has, much like yourself, resistances. Bosses tend to have much more, and map modifiers can change that. But the max you can have at the soft cap is 60, and you can go above that with modifiers, but I'll be totally honest, I've dropped from 60 to 50, more or less, and I haven't noticed a huge difference. So it's, what is it called? A diminishing return, okay? getting a ton of it, getting it to cap is not necessarily super important, or going over cap. There is a lot to be said for having a lot of penetration, but it's not something that you should dump a ton of resources into. Now, this number is going to modify the base number. So if you have, much like the, oh my god, the lightning damage, there is a plus for penetration, and there is a plus percent. The more plus you have, okay, the more flat lightning penetration you have, the more that lightning penetration will get modified and end up higher. Reflect damage. If you do reflect damage, it will be reflected here. Very simple. That's how much damage the enemy is going to take when they hit you. Okay. I don't think... Oh, hold on. I'll do the skills thing for attack as well. So this is going to give your overall. Now, this number, okay, people will look at this number for DPS. This is a skewed number, as is most of the things in here. Don't take these directly at face value. In some cases, people will say, oh, I made my numbers go up. Or in lunatic, crazy people cases, I see people that switch gear. They don't look at the stats on the gear. They literally just switch a gear, and if one has more green numbers, they go with it. That green versus red numbers don't necessarily show you the whole picture, just like this sheet doesn't either. So there's a lot of stuff to pay attention to. But your skills, you can see basically how much lightning damage, your cast speeds. This cast speed number is going to be much more accurate than the one on the stat sheet. Okay, and that's because this shows all of the values that are being applied to this skill versus this one that just shows your base value. So if you're trying to find out if your cast speed is at 5.0, you can see here, I'm clearly nowhere near the cast speed cap on here, but with the actual spell, I'm at 5.0 because it's applying the modifiers from link runes, it's applying the modifiers from the skill itself. So that's something to pay attention to, that you don't have to get 5.0 in terms of cast speed or your crit rate. Again, you should be looking at the crit rate on here. It's harder because you can't see the number value, which again is the important part, not this 100%, but it is something to pay attention to. Okay, I'm going to move into the defense section. Again, I'm going to split this video up because it's probably going to be fairly long. So I'll see you over there. And by over there, I mean right here. I didn't go anywhere. I don't know why I said that. Okay, so your defense stats and how to get more of them. Your armor only affects physical hits. Okay, it's not going to cover everything. So you got to have a crazy amount of armor and no fire resist, and fireballs are going to still kick your ass. This only counts for physical hits and physical projectiles. Okay, armor also doesn't do a great job, even at max level, of dealing with physical projectiles. I don't know why. So that's a separate problem you're going to have to deal with. But armor does physical. That's the base of it. Obviously, the next few, okay? So fire, cold, lightning, and poison are all considered elemental resists. So anytime you see elemental resist on a piece, that means it's going to apply all of these, okay? If you have elemental resist plus 11, it's going to give each of these 11 value. The max required to get resist, I think, I'm not 100% sure on the numbers. I think it's 170 to get max at the high level without anything lowering it from map modifiers or an enemy curse or whatnot. So you're going to want to try to get at least those 4 values to cap. It's going to be fairly important, and it's generally pretty easy to do. If you look at mine, my poison resist is so ridiculously over high right now. I'm trying to move it around, but that's what I'm with at the moment. Now mine go above the 75% max, where if you show maximum, normally it would say 75%. I have some stuff that's raised my resistance values, and even though it is only 0.9%, that is going to make a big difference. So if you happen to have something that will raise the maximum cap, provided you have enough stats to get to that cap, it's a good thing. Chaos Resist is its own special thing. Unless it says specifically Chaos Resist, it's not going to affect it. There are a few things that say all resistances, which does everything. But for the most part, Chaos Resist is something that you have to do on its own. It's also definitely the hardest of the resistances to get. It's going to be significantly harder to get than the others. And for the most part, other than a few bosses and certain enemies, you don't need to get this to cap. Yes, you ideally want to get it to cap, but as long as you have a decent amount, I forget what number I saw at some point, I think it was 80, that is, the game is sort of tuned around having at least 80 Chaos Resist. You don't need to have cap. There are certain bosses like Trischema who are all chaos damage, which are going to be a major problem if you don't get it to cap, but for the most part, you don't need to have this at cap. The next thing is the dampening. Now, this is a big thing. It's a separate thing from resistances, and it's going to make a big difference in how much damage you take. It's also particularly hard to get lots of it. It caps out at 75. It caps out at 75, but you will get significant diminishing returns, much like elemental penetration. The dampening, you'll get diminishing returns around 60%, where trying to cram more of it isn't necessarily going to make you that much tankier, but getting some of this is a good thing to do, and there are a lot of decent ways to do it. There is modifiers on chest, there's modifiers on shield, there is modifiers on boots. I don't have mine on right now, but you can get them in boots. There's dampening in the Zodiac, and there's dampening in your armor mastery. So if you're having trouble and you feel like you're dying a lot, even though your resists are at cap and you've got good armor, try to get some dampening. It can really help. Hitting the wrong buttons every time, man. Every time. Okay. So dodge, okay, much like with the attack stuff, this value is going to go down the higher the levels. So you want to look at the number rather than the percent, again, unless you are in that map where the number will be the correct number. For the percent, that is. I don't know what the dodge rate, like, cap, again, there's no cap, but it'll hit, no cap. It'll hit a value. I forget what the number is, and I don't want to try to say one. Let's say 65,000 at level 150, you will have the maximum dodge you can have, okay, which is 75%. Perfect attack dodge, because people ask, or perfect attack and spell dodge. People ask about this. This is a flat chance to dodge, okay? This number gets affected by enemy level, it gets affected by modifiers and curses and all kinds of other stuff. This is a flat number, okay? If you have perfect spell dodge and you get hit with a spell, you have, let's say you have 5% perfect spell dodge, you have a 5% chance to dodge that, period, on top of your other dodge. It is a separate roll according to the game, so getting this is good if you're running a dodge build, but it's hard to get lots of it unless you sort of focus into dodge. Decrease attack and spell critical damage taken. Exactly what it sounds like. Much like enemies have dampening for your stuff, you have dampening for their stuff. If they're hitting you with a critical hit, this will dampen the amount that you're taking, so it just cuts it off the top. This can get, you can get this on a lot of the higher end charms, and again, if you feel like you're doing fine in maps and you're not having any trouble, and then suddenly you get one shot, you might be taking crit damage, and you might want to stack some of this. As previously stated in the stats thing, you do get amounts of this from having dexterity, and you can get it in other sources. So try to get a little bit of this if you're having trouble with sudden one-hit kills. Block rate is exactly what it sounds like. You will block the damage. It absorbs, it's not like a dodge where it completely nullifies the damage. It absorbs a certain amount. I don't know the values on that because I don't know where they are in the game. I don't think they're anywhere that I know of. If you happen to know, please let me know in the comments. So much like the dodge, this percent number is affected by monster level. So looking at the hard value is generally going to be the way to go. I don't know what maximum value you need to get to the cap for block rate, which is 75%. But getting block is not particularly easy, but it is worth getting if you are running a shield like I am. Stagger recovery speed is fairly self-explanatory. Once in a while, enemies will hit you and you will stagger. Okay, certain moves can do it. Blocking does it. I'm not sure how many others, but you take a certain amount of time to come back from that and be able to do actions, move around, attack, and cast. Higher number, it gets you back faster. It's not particularly important to get this unless you're doing like a melee build where you're going to be getting hit a lot. And reflect damage taken is on certain maps, I'm sure you've run into at some point, you will get hit by your own attacks. Okay, if you're an elemental, you have to watch out for the elemental one. If you're a physical one, you have to watch out for the physical one. This will show you what percent less of that you're going to take. But basically, unless it's this is 100%, you're going to take damage, and you probably should just avoid the maps. Either use them for crafting materials or just set them aside. Okay, that's those two. I'm going to stop the video again and split into these last four because they're very quick. And then I'm going to sort of do an overview of the whole thing. Okay, I'm back and I got ice cream. So, the rest of the stats page is the sort of less important stuff. Now, it's not to say that the stuff in here isn't important, but when it comes to looking at your stats, you're really only ever going to be looking at your attack and defense. Occasionally, you will need to come into these for other reasons, but for the most part, that's it there. The first one is your movement speed. Now, you can click, like the other ones, to bring up where you are getting the things from. So your base movement speed is 600. Okay, I'm getting 65% 65%. Oh my god, I can't talk. 65% increase of that. So a total of 992. There is a movement speed cap of 1500. Good luck getting there. There are ways to get movement speed amplification, and much like amplification for your defenses or your offenses, it's going to make a big difference. One of the ways is to get it on boots, and if you do, you can't get regular move speed on boots, so you better be getting your move speed from another source. Regen should be self-explanatory. Your hit point regen is how many hit points per second you are going to regen without any interference. Without a health pot or anything else, that's what you're going to get. These can be obviously modified quite heavily, and if you click on them, you can see that, again, much like the others, you can see all the breakdown of all the stuff you're getting, your base value and whatnot. Mana and barrier, same thing. The hit point on hit is exactly what it sounds like. It's important to note that there are very, very, very few sources of hit point on spell hit, and they don't do a ton. Okay, there's all kinds of hit point on attack hit, and you should use those. But for spellcasters, there's not really a lot. Mana on every attack hit, mana on spell, barrier, okay, same things. Hit point on kill, I'm not even going to say it. Mana on kill, barrier on kill. Hit point absorb on attack hit. Now this is important because the difference between hit point on every attack and hit point absorb on attack, this is going to give you that many hit points. If I'm getting 6 hit points per attack and I have 11,000 health, that is going to do nothing. Early on in the game, it might feel like a lot, but later on, it's going to drastically slow down. But this hit point absorb on attack hit or hit point absorb on spell hit is going to be huge. To my knowledge, there are very, very few sources of hit point on spell hit. If you happen to know some really good ones, let me know. I'm currently getting mine from the Vesper avatar, but this is an issue with spellcasters, that we don't have a lot of hit point absorption, because generally you would assume that spellcasters are going to go barrier, and if you're going to go barrier, good for you. I know nothing about barrier builds, so good luck. Applied recovery effect is exactly what it sounds like. If this number is higher, any of your recoveries are going to be affected by that. Item drop chance and item drop rarity. There is obviously confusion between these two. Item drop chance is the chance that when you kill an enemy, it will drop an item. And item drop rarity increases the chance that those items will be higher value items. This is generally the important one. Item drop chance, not nearly as much. XP bonus, you get more XP when you kill stuff. These limits, I'm not even going to bother going through, but they are exactly what they look like. Every one of the types of things you can summon has limits, as well as the energies that you can have. If you're using an energy build, you probably know more about it than I do, because I don't really use energy. I used Lightning Wave for a while where I needed to worry about energy, but I don't have a whole lot of knowledge of these. They have a passive effect by having them, and then you can spend them to do things, but I don't know much about them. Status effect. Again, this is something that, for the most part, you're going to look through very, very, very little, and it's skewed because there's certain things that won't show up in here, so I don't see a lot of reason to ever really come in here. If you're worried about a specific thing, okay, so bleed and burn are fairly powerful. If you want to get dodge chance, it's exactly what it looks like. And the burn, or the rate, okay, is your application of that thing. If you come down, where's shock rate? That is your base shock rate per hit. It doesn't need to be particularly high, and it gets modified by lots of stuff, but that's what the rate is, and then the dodge chance is your chance to dodge that effect when it should be applied to you. Orb status. As you go through the game, you're going to get orbs. Every time you get one, you can use it to try and increase the stat up to 70. Every time you use one, the chance that it is going to succeed is going to go down. So it's going to get harder and harder and harder to get to the maximums. If you play a lot, you will get to the maximums on all of them. The only ones I don't currently have maxed out are the damage orbs for types that I don't use, because I don't have a reason to ever I'm never going to need minion damage on this character, so I'm never going to get it. You will get some passively, and some will drop. You can just go ahead and use them if they're exclusive. If they're not exclusive, you can sell them on the auction house. Good luck doing it, because their market is swamped with them, but that is a way to potentially get some rubies. Your Lacrima, obviously, is for your Lacrima. It's just showing the stats that are on your statue. It just saves you having to go over to your statue to look at those stats. Okay, so with all of that said, the bulk of what I want to get across is anytime you're worried about trying to get more damage, you should be trying to get that flat base value, make that bigger pyramid, and amplification to make that base go higher. It's fairly simple. Get your resistances up. Try to get, some either armor and dodge or some combination thereof. I am going to do a separate video later, probably not today, on how to go about layering defenses and why you shouldn't just go all into one. But that's a separate topic. I hope this helps with the basics of understanding how to get your build to do damage. The cat thinks I have ice cream and he's trying to get my hand. I hope it helps. That's why I make these videos. If I make mistakes, as always, please let me know in the comments, and I will put a correction either in the description or make a separate video that will be linked into the description if it is a longer topic. I hope these help, and if you want to come talk to me on Twitch, I'm going to put my link in the description as well. Other than that, guys, good luck out there. I hope you do all the stuff and get all the numbers and your character kicks all of the butts.